Most Democrats I know think, frankly, that males at birth shouldn't play in women's sports and vice versa.
The truth finally revealed, only after the election, of course. But Democrats are finally coming around to stating the obvious: biological men do not belong in women's sports.
One Democratic congressman from Massachusetts telling the New York Times, quote, "I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or a formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that."
Another Democrat from our next guest's home state says, quote, "I don't want to discriminate against anybody, but I don't think biological boys should be playing in girls' sports."
Joining us now, New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Just quickly reminding everyone, day one when Biden took office, he unilaterally eviscerated women's sports. Any educational institution that receives federal funding must admit biologically male athletes to women's teams and women's scholarships. They destroyed women's sports intentionally with this fringe radical idea. Congresswoman.
Absolutely, and I'm a woman athlete. I can't imagine the fight that we had to get Title IX, at least just to get the opportunity to have scholarships for women athletes. But this is one of those issues, Dagan, where you can be a Democrat and Republican and disagree on where you do the tax cuts. You can disagree on, some border nuances, but this is a bright line. It's wrong, and people recognize it. And I heard that all across my district, and particularly in New York. We had a proposition passed that's going to double down on this exact biological males and women's sports. And actually, they don't even have to be transitioning. They can be just a man playing in a women's sport if he feels like it, without even being in the so-called what they call a protected class. This is going to be backfiring on the Democrats because they manipulated the voters in this so-called Proposition 1 in New York. By the way they explained it, it was a very vague, namby-pants, oh, this is going to be wonderful, we're just going to care about everybody. But wait till this gets implemented, and if it does, this is an opportunity for the Republicans to chip away at this majority that the Democrats have in the state legislature and to bring common sense back. It's going to be a bad omen for the Democrats going into the next election, I think. And obviously, I think it's the reason President Trump won so decisively.
Claudia, I think if you run for office, you're there to lead. You're there to be bold. And I look at these Democrats who have now come out and said, after the election, Donald Trump ran on it. Donald Trump won. I kind of now have permission to talk about this issue that, again, everyone in America are like, that's not fair to have boys competing against girls in girls' sports. I think these are a bunch of cowards. They should have stood up and said it a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago when it first started happening. Don't wait until Donald Trump gets elected to give you permission. Be bold and call your party out right away. They didn't do that.
Yeah, well, they didn't do it because they're terrified of primaries and the far left taking them out in it. But this is really common sense. And I even think there are people that I know that are pretty far left that think that this is wrong, especially, you saw like Congressman Seth Moulton describing that he had 2 daughters. These are real issues that affect families. I have, all kinds of people reaching out to me in New York because of this Prop 1 when they woke up today and said, oh, my gosh, this thing passed. Mm-hmm. And to look and say, is my daughter now going to be denied the opportunity to play in a varsity sport because some biological male is going to get to play? And again, I emphasize in New York, this proposition doesn't require that you're, transitioning. You can be just a guy that wants to play in a women's sport, and now you're going to be mandated. All of our schools are going to be able to do that. And the worst thing about this, Sean, and you as a lawyer especially, now we're going to have a private right of action against school districts, against anyone who discriminates on the basis of any of these, whether it's a private school, public school, regardless of that. And that's going to be lawsuits, divisiveness, and enriching, again, the trial bar at the expense of individuals and small businesses and school districts that are struggling actually with the highest taxes probably in the nation in New York State when it comes to school tax. So real problematic issues. And it's a winning issue. I'm so glad Trump leaned into this. And we have Riley Gaines actually to thank for this. She was the leader on this. She courageously came out and pointed out
we have to run,
this
Claudia,
was with a bright line.